Welcome to the Explainer. So look, if you've spent even like 1 week working in an ER or an ICU, you know the exact high-stress scenario we are looking at today. You're standing there, your patient is deteriorating, and someone hands you a single, tiny slip of paper, the ABG. Interpreting that little piece of paper dictates immediate, high-stakes, life-or-death decisions. I mean, it literally guides you on whether to intubate, how to tweak that ventilator, and exactly how to pull a crashing patient back from the brink. Today, we are blending pure fastopathology with vital clinical practice to give you the absolute ultimate breakdown of acid-base disturbances.
Okay, let's dive into this. The literal difference between a patient crashing and stabilizing? Well, it often comes down to one of the absolutely tiniest, most reactive ions in the entire human body. Yet we're talking about the free hydrogen ion. This is the foundational building block of pH itself.
Just 40 nanomoles. Literally, that is it. To keep all of our body's enzymatic functions happy and running at an optimal pH of 7.4, the human body strives, it fights tooth and nail, honestly, to maintain exactly 40 nanomoles of free hydrogen ions per liter. The body is in this relentless, never-ending battle to keep this concentration in an incredibly narrow window. Because if it deviates too much, our internal systems just completely shut down.
To put that crazy number into perspective, let's compare two vital ions. Over on the left, we've got potassium, right? We measure that in millimoles. But on the right, hydrogen is measured in nanomoles. Now, 1 millimole is 1,000,000 nanomoles. So the amount of potassium circulating in your blood right now is literally 100,000 times greater than hydrogen. But here's the kicker. Even though it is barely there, hydrogen's fluctuations are so powerful, so wildly reactive, that they can completely derail the body's entire homeostasis.
And because hydrogen is just so incredibly tiny and reactive, it's honestly really hard to measure directly. We can't just slap a standard pressure gauge on it. Instead, we use the pH scale. You know, the one. Basically, pH is simply the power, or if we're being highly technical, the negative logarithm of base 10 of that free hydrogen ion concentration.
All right, let's meet the 3 heroes of homeostasis.
So, every single day, just existing and running normal metabolism generates a massive acid load, about 100 millimoles. That is a ton of acid actively threatening to tank our pH. To survive this daily onslaught, our body relies on 3 defensive lines working in perfectly staggered shifts. Step 1, buffers. They act almost instantly, in seconds. Step 2, the lungs kick in, within minutes to adjust how we breathe. And Step 3, the kidneys. They play the long game, taking hours to days to maintain overall balance in the blood.
Think of our primary buffers, things like bicarbonate, proteins, and hemoglobin, as basically cellular sponges. The absolute second the hydrogen amount shoots up, these sponges absorb it. When it drops, they squeeze it back out. And this whole immediate buffering dance is constantly catalyzed by an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, which effortlessly converts all that excess acid and bicarb into water and carbon dioxide so we can safely flush it out of our system.
Now, our second hero, the lungs, they're fast, but they definitely have their limits. If you've got metabolic acidosis, your lungs will immediately start hyperventilating to wash out that acidic carbon dioxide. But, and this is absolutely crucial to remember, their compensation potential totally caps out at around 50 to 70%. So whether they're hyperventilating to blow off CO2 or slowing down to hold onto it, the lungs alone are never ever going to get you perfectly back to a 7.4 pH.
Okay, we've all stared at that terrifying Henderson-Hasselbalch equation in textbooks, right? Well, actually, scratch that. Let's make it super simple. Here's what brilliantly illustrates the relationship. Bicarb has a direct relationship with pH. Bicarb goes up, pH goes up. Easy. But carbon dioxide, that's an inverse relationship. If CO2 goes up, the pH goes down. It's basically a giant physiological seesaw.
So when you're standing at the bedside doing rapid acid-base interpretation, you've got to throw out those standard normal ranges. Stop thinking about 7.35 to 7.45. Focus exclusively on the absolute cutoffs. Above 7.4 is alkalosis, below is acidosis. Simple. For bicarb, your absolute pivot point is 24. For PCO2, it's 40. Pinning those exact numbers in your head makes reading an ABG so much easier.
Moving right along into the danger zones.
So what exactly happens when homeostasis just utterly fails? We hit the absolute outer limits of human life. If the pH drops to 6.8, hydrogen spikes to 160 nanomoles, and there is just no way a person survives that. But look over at the alkalotic side.
A pH of just 7.7, where hydrogen drops to 20 nanomoles, is also entirely lethal. Which highlights something kind of fascinating. The human body is actually way more tolerant of being too acidic than it is of being too basic. Let's look at the absolute systemic devastation of severe acidemia, which is when the pH drops below 7.2. Your heart literally loses its ability to squeeze effectively. Your arteries dilate, tanking your blood pressure, while, ironically, your pulmonary vessels constrict. The body just stops responding to life-saving vasopressors. And maybe the scariest part? As all that excess hydrogen forces its way into your cells, it aggressively kicks potassium out. This causes a massive, deadly spike in blood potassium, which we call hyperkalemia.
By contrast, when alkalemia becomes severe and crosses that 7.6 threshold, it completely sabotages the body's protective efforts. It triggers coronary vasospasms, literally cramping your heart's blood vessels, and causes crazy, stubborn ventricular arrhythmias. It physically depresses your urge to breathe. In your brain, the blood vessels constrict, leading to delirium and even seizures. Oh, and metabolically, your vital electrolytes like potassium and calcium, yeah, they all just crash at the exact same time.
Okay, let's get into decoding acid-base disturbances.
Now that we know what's at stake, let's empower you with the absolute golden rules for instantly decoding this stuff. So, the crucial point is directionality. In metabolic disturbances, the pH, the bicarb, and the PCO2 travel together in a pack. They all move in the exact same direction. If it's metabolic acidosis, all three point down. But in respiratory disturbances, remember that seesaw. The pH and the PCO2 are going to move in completely opposite directions.
So what actually causes respiratory acidosis? Well, logically, it's anything that dangerously traps CO2 in your lungs, letting that acid build up. We're talking lower airway obstructions, like severe asthma or COPD. It could be CNS depression, like from a brain trauma or an opioid overdose that just shuts down your drive to breathe. Or it could be a neuromuscular issue. Or honestly, just having the completely wrong settings plugged into a mechanical ventilator.
On the flip side, respiratory alkalosis happens when conditions make you hyperventilate, meaning you blow off way too much CO2. This includes your central nervous system getting overstimulated by things like a high fever, severe pain, or extreme anxiety. It happens during hypoxemia, say from being at a super high altitude. It can even be triggered by a pulmonary embolism, or naturally driven by hormones like progesterone during pregnancy.
So, we've seen how the lungs manage, and sometimes fail, to control our pH. We totally get that respiratory seesaw now. But that leaves us with a massive, kind of provocative question. What happens when the rest of the body's metabolic engine turns acidic? Like, how do we calculate those completely annoying anion gaps? Well, that is exactly what we're going to decode in the next part of this explainer. Keep thinking, stay curious, and we will see you then.